Hey folks, in this episode, I get to sit down with Elia Locardi. He's a world travel photographer. We're going to talk about traveling the world and some of the things that he's got planned in the future coming up. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Scene, a Skyloom podcast. We're talking to Elia Locardi today, and we're talking to him from his beautiful home down in Florida, where his unfortunate wings have been cut because we are in the middle of a global pandemic right now. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how that affects a world travel photographer not being able to travel, what he's doing instead of that, and all that good stuff. So Elia, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Looking at your website, I gotta say it's intimidating. So you got a lot of amazing work out there. You've been to all the places that I have on my bucket list to go to. You are living that life that photographers dream of, right? I want to be a cool photographer. I want to be going to these cool places, interacting with cool people, making amazing photographs, and then, sharing them with the world, and then training people. You're doing all that. Is this what you set out to do? Did you have like a blueprint at the beginning, or you said, this is what Elia is going to look like in 2020? How did it come about?
No. I mean, there wasn't a blueprint. You just kind of have hopes. I think that it just kind of molded into something. Before I got into photography, I was in animation, motion design, computer animation, and it crushed my soul after 10 years. I was like, I can't look at After Effects. I can't work with clients. So we decided to make a change. It was at the time with the housing crisis, 2007, 8, and 9. So we lost our house, part of how, a lot of America did. And we decided to move north of South Florida. We were in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, and we moved to a small little beach town on the Space Coast. And I was like, I'm never going to open a computer screen again. I'm never going to design again. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to learn how to surf and have a simple life. Mm-hmm. And for a 20-something-year-old to say I'm retired is just kind of a weird thing. And it lasted a couple months. I was like, this is cool, but I got to create art again. And photography had always been a fun thing. So I thought, if I'm going to get back into art, it's going to be something that I enjoy, and I don't care about making money. It was never really meant to be a career. It was meant to just be an outlet. And being in post-production in Miami for 10 years meant 80-hour weeks. We never took a vacation, never went anywhere. My wife had never been outside of the United States. Her family's Italian. She'd never been to Italy. So we managed to take a trip to Italy and took some photos. And I'm like, man, I wish there was a way we could do more of this. So we just started traveling, taking photos, and for a few years just doing that. And then in 2011, I took it seriously. I think that year I flew around 220,000 miles just to start building a portfolio. And what changed, the biggest change for us was in 2012. Prior to that, we were coming back and forth to home. And we decided that we could really invest in this lifestyle by basically getting rid of almost everything that we owned and becoming location independent. So in March of 2012, we had a one-way ticket to Sydney, Australia, and we basically didn't come home for 5 years. So that's what I really started catapulting into this, picking up clients. It was also the other thing, the catalyst, I think, for a lot of us at that time was social media. Because 2011, we had Google Plus, that came out, and suddenly all the photographers are on, a tight-knit group. We met everybody. And then other companies like Google was like, hey, come visit. You're on Google Plus. Like, great. So we'd start doing things all over the world. And slowly, and this is the key to any success in business, it's not rapid. It's slow. Mm-hmm. Over years and by degrees, we started taking on larger projects, doing more things in different parts of the world, and teaching. Speaking at Photokina, Photo Plus, doing a lot of expos, art expos, all sorts of things like that, until it turned into a full-time gig to where we couldn't manage it homeless anymore. Location independent was great, but if you have a project, in China where you need 6 drones, but you have to go through Dubai first where you can't take drones, I had to ship things to where we were going, swing by Florida to grab things out of storage, have somebody pick it up in Rome for me or send it to Tokyo. It got so complicated that we decided to come back. and it was actually really nice. So we've been back in Florida for a couple of years and bought a house last year, and my daughter's turning 1 next month. So this year I was already trying to wind down, because usually I'm an average of 150,000 miles a year. So this year, because of COVID, I went from 150,000 to no thousand, to no, not flying. But the timing for me was good because, starting a family, and I mean, I can't imagine if we were still homeless when all this kind of went down. But it's been basically 11 solid years up until this point. And when I explain it now, and people are like, "Oh, you're a photographer, you're a travel photographer," and I say, "Well, I used to be one."
Right.
None of us are traveling. None of us really know. So we're in uncharted territory at the moment.
It's scary, right? I mean, it's scary and interesting at the same time, because it's like, yeah, you're in uncharted territory, or we all are. But people that are affected the most are businesses that are heavily reliant on travel or interaction with other humans, like restaurants and sporting events and concerts and that kind of thing. So what does it look like, jumping forward? How, what are your projections to pivot into this, or is it just, let's just ride the wave and see when the curtains open up again and then travel can kick off again?
Well, that's interesting because, and it's a multi-part question, so it has a few different answers. And we have to start with how things were, and that's no matter what we were doing, if we were affected heavily by COVID-19, we had how things were. And like you said, we're either waiting for things to happen that way again, or we pivoted. At this point, we're 6 months in, 7 months in. So a lot of us have kind of pivoted, or at least picked up like a side hustle to get us to there. But at the end of last year, I was already planning on making 2020 a break, not stopping travel altogether, but I was going to sort of spread it out, because I was mostly concerned with being home with my daughter. I don't want to miss her early life. But what happened is everything was kind of scheduled. I was taking January off, and I was supposed to be in Tokyo and Japan for 3 weeks in February to shoot a bunch of stuff. And this is way before we got shut down and, we declared it a pandemic. And I just remember looking at the calendar. I was supposed to fly 2 days, and I'm like, what if I get stuck? And then I got an email from one of the hotels saying they're not letting me stay because I'm a foreigner, and they're only allowing Japanese, no foreigners to stay. And I'm like, if I'm there, it's just a scare right now, but what if I catch a cold and I'm sneezing? Like, I'm not going to be able to get a taxi. What if somebody in my hotel gets it? I'm going to be stuck, and then we don't know what's going to happen. And I called Delta and I canceled everything. They were nice enough to refund my ticket before it was a hot zone or anything like that. And I think it was weird because at first I had to do was let go of the fact that I'm going to be going anywhere, right? I was like, let's just assume we're not going anywhere for months. So I just canceled everything through the summer. I was like, I don't know how long this is going to take, but the worst thing you can do, and we used to run a lot of photo tours and a lot of workshops in different parts of the world. The worst thing that can happen is you push it back by a couple months, you reschedule everything, and then you have to do it again. So for me, it was just cancel it all and wait. But what I started to do was I started to talk to some clients that I work with, different software and camera companies, and be like, hey, remember what we wanted to do, but we didn't have time? Or, hey, remember that project that I wanted to do, but I'm never at home? I started doing those things, building tutorials, education programs, some stuff with Skyloom. The Skypack is coming out next week, which like 26 sunsets, presets, all of these things that I've been thinking that would be great if I had time. I just went ahead and put full force into it. So that's where I'm at. It's nice. So I've stayed actually busier now than I probably would have been if I was just traveling. But I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm also not in a hurry to get out there and travel until I know it's safe, because I'm not in that. I'm paranoid about everything but I am in, the part where I really want to be respectful of everybody else. I don't want to carry this. I don't want to bring it back to my family. And I kind of learned that clients are really respective of that. We have stuff going on that was supposed to be this year, and they're like, how's 2021? But we're flexible. So a lot of the stuff has been pushed back because most of us realize that none of this is really a rush. And simultaneously, the travel industry, it's been very difficult to market travel up until the last couple of months when Europe opened up. If we were like, imagine this being hit like being an Instagrammer, somebody who's an influencer on Instagram who just goes to beautiful places and destinations. Then all of a sudden that just makes people sad. Like, I mean, you already made somebody feel bad because you got a million followers and, there's a girl in a bikini and it's nice, you're already making people feel bad, but now you're reminding the world of what we don't have. So how do you even market that? And I think that the reason why this is the most unique is what gave me comfort. And it's a weird thing to say, is that it's happening to everybody. If it was just happening to me and everybody else was traveling and everything was fine, then it would be different. But we're all kind of, for better or worse, sharing this together. And I think that, at least for me, helped me come to the terms and sort of surrender to the universe to say, you know what, we're going to be patient and we're going to wait to see what happens. And while we make sure we're, paying the bills and everything, we're just going to be patient and kind of hope for the best. And I think it's easy to do when you see all the people out there being supportive of each other and trying to do the same thing. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, yeah. I'm riding my mute switch because gardeners are outside my window right now.
No problem. Well, you said there was like a little delay. It's kind of like watching a kung fu movie right now with you, but
it totally is. I know it is. I can't even look at myself because it's delayed on my side. But you said something. You said something really interesting. Just people don't want to be reminded of what's going on, and it's interesting. But the other side of that coin is people don't want to. At least me, when I look at images now, I instantly timestamp them. Because it's like, oh, look at all those people on the beach. That must be pre-COVID. Or hey, they have masks on in that shot. That must be a current shot, right? So. How do you reconcile that? I wonder. Especially when you re-engage with shooting again. How do you reconcile that? I want to take a beautiful picture of this location, but people have masks on in this shot, and it's going to remind people of the danger, and and I'm there and all that. Yeah. Do you think about that at all?
Everything is different. I mean, I watch movies, some of my favorite movies, and I just think they're not social distancing. Oh, wait. That's right. You're watching Fight Club and you're like, aren't they afraid of getting COVID?
Right. Exactly.
Well, yeah. And over the last few years, I've been speaking about and trying to help in some regard over tourism and destructive tourism. So if anybody who's watching has seen Photographing the World with F-Stoppers, we shot in Angkor Wat and there's like 1,000 people in a crowd and you're almost getting pushed in. So I also have to shoot in some of the busiest places in the world. And it's some of it times it's horrendous when you're just packed in with people, but that's the only viewpoint or vantage point available. And we knew that was going to have to change. Venice, we read stories about Venice and overcrowding and the amount of cruise ships and all these things, people with picket signs. In Mallorca Island in Spain, saying go home, you're wrecking our house, and people don't want to be an asshole, right? Well, maybe these days with COVID, some people do want to be an asshole, but typically people don't want to say, it's like, it is. And some people are going to say, bye. But you're not like flying to Mallorca saying, you know what, screw them. I don't care about their damn home. I want to take my vacation. You're more like, oh, I didn't realize that me staying in a hotel wasn't supporting the community. So that's how we were starting to sort of curb the over tourism thing. But now with COVID, it's almost like a gift to over tourism. It's obviously horrible for tourism for everybody. But in the future, I think now we're going to finally have to redesign some of these places. Like we can't support 1,000 bodies packed in anymore. And I think even when this goes away, that long-standing effect and feeling is going to be lasting for a long time. I don't see us shedding that. So it's going to be an interesting world when we do open back up, because we're still going to feel like, I don't really want to be close to anybody.
Exactly.
It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we will all have some degree of PTSD from this. And with a healthy, hopefully, a healthy sprinkling of hypochondria, right? It's like, or germophobia. We're all germaphobes now, right?
If we all have learned to wash our hands, the world will be a better place. I'm a believer in that. It's a very, very interesting thing that we've all been kind of, we've all learned sort of the hard way about this. But everything, if you think about it, not just the places. And airlines are having a problem with this. Delta's doing the best. Obviously, they're the company I use too. they're just crushing it every time. I'm so happy with what they're doing, but you can't social distance on an airplane.
No, you can't. You're in a tube and you're rebreathing everybody's air, right? So
yeah, and we've been complaining for years the way that they measured for seats, right? They don't measure people's shoulders, they measure their hips, which is different, so they can get away with smaller seats, more seats together. I mean, a personal hell of mine is being on an Air France flight, in the middle are 5 seats. You got, here, and then one guy in the middle. Can you imagine being stuck in the middle? No way. And now that's not going to fly, literally, unintended. We're going to have to rebuild and re-engineer things to be more comfortable, which is how they should have been in the first place. So I'm really interested to see how this is going to influence design. It's going to influence commerce. We've learned that most jobs can be done at home, which companies a lot of them have been fighting against for a while. We've learned that schools can operate with remote learning, which is something we've talked about. So a lot of things have proved that whether or not our old system was pro-bacteria, it certainly wasn't effective as much as we thought it was. So everybody we're all going to remember this. My daughter is going to come from this time. And I think that that's interesting. I'll be able to tell her about coronavirus and COVID-19 and how things were when you were a baby. And then she'll be like, you tell that stupid story all the time. I know that's going to happen, but we're starting to anticipate some of the positive changes, but none of us really know. And I'm very interested in it. I read a lot about it every day, not just the graphs and everything. I read about the people who are trying to solve these problems and figure out post-COVID world, how are we going to sort of reinvent the ways that we did things that don't work anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting, and like you said, I think it's moving in a direction where it's being forced to move rapidly in a direction that it probably should have moved in before, because before there was no reason to really consider the issue of overcrowding or traffic in LA or things like that, and now it's suddenly lifted up a little bit because companies are like, well, you don't really need to come in. And if you don't need to come in, do we really need all those cubicles over there? And do we really need this much space, for when we can work remotely? Oh, and by the way, since we're remote, we can hire employees globally now. We don't have to worry about people in the geographic area, so we can be a stronger company. So yeah, it's interesting.
And Google just did that too. They're letting everybody work from home until July 2021. And that's the example, like Adobe, I said, with my travel, just why not set that date? Because then you don't have to reschedule it. Just say, you know what, it works, do this for another year and reassess, rather than keeping. And what drives me crazy about the current situation is nobody can make plans. Nobody knows, one side saying open the schools and other people are saying it's not safe. But every day it's like, are we doing this? Are we doing this? Are we doing this? Are we going to shut down? Are we going to open? Just set a date. Obviously having national leadership would be helpful too, but setting dates is the most important thing. So for better or worse, people can get on with their life. It's like, well, things are going to suck, but I know they're going to suck for 2 months. It sucks every day to wake up and say, I don't know what's happening. And that's been the frustrating thing, I think, watching this, where it would just be easier if people had a deadline or a date, of their either happiness or misery, whichever side of it whatever's happening with.
Well, it's like anything. It's like anything. When I was in the military, I remember going through basic training, and I was thinking, as long as I know the date that we're going to be done with this thing, I can get through anything. But
exactly.
It's the not having a date thing, that will screw with your mind because then your brain goes to permanence. You're like, this is just the way things are now. I can't really wish for it to be over because I have no idea. So it's just permanent. And then that'll screw with you.
Yeah.
So,
and I think us in Florida, I was born and raised in Florida too. We're so used to hurricanes. You see impending doom for a week and a half at a time, and it changes. So you have to learn to be terrified, but not actively in terror. It's like a weird feeling, and we're kind of used to it. I mean, it's not a good thing to be used to, but.
That's awesome. I've never heard it put like that. Terrified, but not actively in terror. So aware, but not frightened.
Yeah, it came from my mom when I was so shy when I was a kid. Anytime I had to talk in front of a class or whatever in elementary school, and I mean, remember book reports? I think we're around the same age. Remember book reports and stuff like that, and I'd be all nervous about I got to do this. And I have 2 weeks to prepare for it, but every day I'm like terrified. And my mom's like, why are you so scared about that? Because I have a book report in 2 weeks. You're not doing it right now. I'm like, huh.
Mm-hmm.
So I only need to be terrified right before. That makes sense.
Just in time terror, right?
Just postpone it. If you're that good of a procrastinator like I am, you can also procrastinate on being afraid.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we're expert procrastinators. It's called being human. I want to switch gears. So while I have
Sure.
you, you're one of the few people I know that have traveled as much as you do, right? Or did/do/will again.
Sure.
I want to talk about what that looks like, right? So, if we look at the way that someone like me, I would say I'm like kind of a core sample of the advanced amateur audience that wants to be kind of like you and know how to travel professionally. How do you get to be a professional traveler? What are your tips? I look on YouTube and I see things like, oh, you got to put all your clothes in plastic baggies, and you got to only pack these kind of ex officio underwear, and you wash them yourself in the sink, or only bring this gear with you. And what are some nuggets of truth that you can give photographers when it comes to going to places unknown? It's one thing to travel from Florida to Texas, but it's another thing to travel from Florida to Vietnam and on a mission. Like, what are some tips that you can give people?
Well, first of all, I would say that flying to Texas, once you get there, feels much more foreign than a lot of foreign places. That's another Florida thing.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, because anything bad, it's Florida, man. And you read that crazy news, it's either Florida or Texas. So we kind of compete for that. Well, I mean, there are a lot of things. It's and I have a follow-up answer for that too. But the packing thing, yeah, that's interesting for us. Oh my God, 10 years ago it was horrible. Like, airlines were trying to enforce that, 5 or 7 kilogram or 15-pound limit on carry-on. I've gotten yelling matches with people, but it's gotten much easier now because everybody has electronics, iPads, iPhones, everything. Everybody has a camera. But you can't really get around, unless you want to pay for it, the 50-pound or 23-kilogram rule. And that's changed a lot, like the 40 pounds or 50 pound for an airline. So if you're traveling to Texas and you have status with Delta, they'll give you 3 70-pound bags, whatever. Just throw it all in there. And in the United States, we're spoiled because you can get on an airplane and try to lift your bag up, and 2 flight attendants will be like, "What's in there? A bag of rocks?" You're like, "Yeah, it's my rock collection." And you're like pushing it up there, But then you're trying to fly Air France or one of the budget airlines, and like it weighs more than 10 pounds, like 10.1 pounds. They're like, "You can't take that on. You got to take something out." And you're just like, and there's so many arguments you can make. So the 23, usually internationally you get 1 bag, right? 1 or 2, but just plan on 1 50-pound bag. And
to camera
gear, the thing is you can take all your panel rails, you can take all your tripods, you can take everything on, but then you're going to be heavy. So what a lot of people do, and I'm not a big guy, so I can't hide a big backpack, but what a lot of people do is they stuff some lenses in their shirts. They, have big pockets or a jacket on and stuff like that. But what I do now, the rule is for bag weight is to change from like 23 or 30 kilo to the next tier is like usually $200. But to add an additional bag is like $25, $30. So we have sort of collapsible duffel bags in our bags. So when we're traveling from place to place, we can subsidize or sort of transfer some of the stuff in the bag. So if you go from Delta to, Vietnam Air, they're actually a great partner. But if you go to one of the other ones, if you're flying in India, it goes from 23 kilos to 15. So at that point, you're like, you have this crazy overweight bag and you didn't plan. So what I do is then I can take that other bag out, split them into 2. And when I get there, I put them back. So we're constantly changing and rearranging things or dividing up weight. That's the one that takes a long time. And then the research, a lot of people ask when they first start traveling, can I take my tripod on the, it's like, yeah, you can. A couple countries, they don't allow it to be more than 20 inches. But that's very rare that happens. So you can carry that on, put the ball head in the check bag, put the tripod on the side of the bag, and people have become very accommodating. Keeping the gear safe, that's really, I think I've been on 500 or 600 more flights over the last 10 years. And that's always the concern is gate checking or checking camera gear. And my universal rule is do not do it.
Don't check your camera gear. Yeah.
And tell them that it's camera gear. If your bag's a little heavy, it's like, this is all delicate cameras and lenses. I need to keep it safe. Can I please, carry this on, and usually they're accommodating. The other thing is you have to kind of know the airplane. So if you're on a Dash 8, the overhead space, little prop plane, is very minimal. So you have a very shallow, but it's weird because you learn that it's shallow, but then it's deep when you get in there. So as long as your thing's narrow, you could shove it in there. And what they won't tell you is if you're on a Dash 8 or even a CRJ 700, 800, while your rollerboard won't fit in the overhead, it'll fit under the seat. It slides right under the seat because there's no entertainment system on the seat. So I've been in situations where like, sir, you can't take on the plane. I was like, I'll make you a deal. If it doesn't fit under the seat, you can check it. And then I just roll it right under the seat, you know?
Nice.
So
nice.
we get those little things. And of course, the first couple of years, you're really nervous, but then you're like, I don't really care. You just talk to them. You know, everybody's a person. Always be nice, you know, smile, be
don't
conversational.
Be the angry passenger.
Be polite. Yeah, be polite, because politeness will get you really far. The way that you get into it, I think that's tough because there's it's disappeared. The job of an actual travel photographer, somebody who worked for a magazine who would go to locations specifically to document shots. They do still exist, but it's kind of a work for hire. I do get some jobs where they just want to pay somebody to shoot new images rather than trying to get a volume of stock images. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing for anything is getting your work known. So it's either knowing an agency or getting in with an agency that'll feed you work, like slowly. Tourism boards are really important. Some of the local Florida tourism, I'm contacting them because I'm like, hey guys, I'm here for a year. You want to do something? But you get in touch with them. And then that, I guess, is the new sort of key for whatever the form of influencer is on Instagram, right? So if you can build a small, moderate following and you have a good engagement, it doesn't necessarily matter if you have 100,000 followers. If you have 8,000 followers and you have high engagement and everybody's really excited to follow you, you can talk to people. You can talk to hotels, and they usually will help you out. In fact, they usually have Instagram or influencer packages now. And obviously, some of them are really tired of people always saying, hey, I'll give you exposure for a free stay.
Of course. Yeah.
But you have to find a way where you can, offset those costs. I think that usually it's the hotels and the flights, because the only thing from stopping you from being a travel photographer is probably usually budget or the job, right? Like you can't leave. Mm-hmm. Now that most of us are working remotely, that's number one. Number one, have a job that you can do anywhere in the world. If you're a web designer, as long as you have an internet connection, you can work. Then you don't have to be home. You can be anywhere that there's an internet connection. That's step one. For us, the other step for location independent was we don't have a big budget. I mean, we'd also eat peanut butter and jelly every day. It was amazing that we could do that on a shoestring budget. But when you don't have a cell phone, when you don't have a car payment, when you don't have an insurance payment, when you don't have rent, when you don't have any of that stuff, then that money, as long as you have something coming in, can go into travel. But then you have to think about it. You get the flights. I mean, most of my flights have not been first class. Book travel deals on flights, really try to get the most out of that. Also, when you're staying in hotels, don't stay at a fancy hotel, and go further than that. It's so easy now. You can do this on hotels or booking.com. Rent an apartment, Airbnb if you can, and then you can cook your own meals. So you save money there. Take public transportation. Don't get in a taxi every minute. That adds up in New York alone. If you just get on the subway, learn the subway. These are all the things that you can do. You can shave money off. And if you think about it this way too, if you're if you both work, husband, wife, kids, a normal sort of working family, think about all the times that you eat out. Like, so how many times do you eat out a month? For me and my wife, it can be like 60, 70. But we live in Florida. This is not like New York prices, but it's going to be upwards $300, $400, $500 a month if you eat out, frequently or semi-frequently. If you actually add that up, that's a few thousand a month. That could cover a 2-week trip to Italy if you're frugal. So it's possible for people to put together a budget. And I know that sort of the American thought form for travel is like, I'm going to sit on a beach. I'm going to, drink a fruity drink, or, people always think it's like a luxury thing. But for the life of a travel photographer is very rarely luxurious if we're really out there, because we're getting to places, not the places that have a million people, but places that are a little bit more remote. It might actually just be sleeping outside. The first few times I went to Iceland, we rented like a Volkswagen Jetta and just slept in the Jetta every night. And then every fourth or fifth day, we're like, you need a shower. So we're going to get a hotel then, just to kind of clean up. But it's really just challenging yourself to be frugal and learn how to be in degrees of discomfort. That's the other thing. And that I think is
because that's the glamour, right? People think it's glamorous. People/me think it's hey, you're a travel photographer, you're living the life, you're jet set. You get off the plane, you get off your private jet with your gazillion dollars worth of camera gear. You walk across the tarmac in slow motion, and you go do your gig, and you party at night, eat in 5-star restaurants, get back on your plane, go back, get in your Tesla, and ride home. Right? So you're saying
right?
It's not like that? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's like that. This without the Tesla, everything else is completely completely accurate. There are projects that come in. I do, and I was doing work if I was working with Fujifilm, and doing workshops with them, maybe a month or two out of the year in different parts of the world. I don't have control of where I'm staying because they're booking the hotels, and they'll usually book something nicer than what I book. Because it's sort of like the company thing. But for us, 3 stars are better. We usually, the biggest thing is if it's safe and clean and internet connection. Can be really frustrating when you're trying to get work done. But other than that, we're kind of adventurous, but we're not stupid. We know it's like, I shouldn't stay in that place. I remember I picked one place in Istanbul and there were bars on the window, and I'm like looking at the place and I'm like, I don't think I think we're going to find somewhere else.
Let's obey our sort of instincts on this one. Right?
We used to have, I don't use them anymore. Have you ever heard of PackSafe? The bags that have the mesh in them?
No. Tell me.
So if you look at PackSafe, I was just, I'm about to do like 30 hours of video content. So we're rearranging this to be like a nice looking studio. I found them in the closet. So we didn't get the bags that you can't cut through, they got the wire mesh, but you can buy the wire mesh, right? It comes in a little pouch, and you can pull this wire mesh over your bag and then lock it onto something. So unless somebody has wire cutters, they come into your hotel room, they can't get it. So we used to, like in 2011, 2012, we'd go to Shanghai, get like a 3-star place. And then since we didn't want to take everything, I remember because we have everything with us our whole life, it was hard to just easily go somewhere that required like a little boat or whatever. So we'd take our stuff that we didn't need, fill those backpacks or that extra bag that we have, and we'd lock everything down. So if there was like a door frame to the bathroom, I'd lock everything around the door frame, put the do not disturb sign, and we'd go for 4 or 5 days. And then come back because the hotel's maybe $20 or $30 a night. So we used to do all these creative things when we were more paranoid about it.
What did that look like? I mean, have you had any sort of worst case scenario situations where you're out and about and you come back to the room and it's in a different state than it was when you left?
Well, I have never had issues with theft in hotel rooms, but I know there are some parts of the world where it's almost like they take offense if you don't let them clean, and after a few days, like I know that I'm trying to explain you don't have to clean, and they're going in there and cleaning, but I've never had any issue with that. I spent a lot of time in Japan, and I've learned how to say no thank you and just tomorrow or whatever I need. But like they're so polite, everybody's so polite there, and everything's weird if you don't want it. But you also have to think about the country that you're in. Even countries that aren't safe, nobody's going to steal anything in your hotel room in Japan. It's just not going to happen. It's just, unless it's a foreigner, might seize an opportunity. But usually, and this was explained to me, I think, only around 2012 or 2013, the first time I went to Santorini in Greece. And I've done a lot of photography there over the years, but we stayed at this weird little bed and breakfast where basically we just had a room in this old sort of, well, they're all old white buildings, and it was very Greek style. It was so cheap because Santorini was so expensive, but this was like $25 a night or something. And it was a very simple room with a little wooden table and a bed. And then the woman would make breakfast every day. And, it was weird because you're staying in this area with a bunch of people, almost like kind of like a hostel. But another thing about that is every night that lady, because it was a husband and wife thing, she'd get so drunk and scream at her husband. So like every night it's like smash, and like we're like in bed like, oh my goodness. And then in the morning she's like, how did you sleep? Were you sleep really well? We're like, really well. We slept really well. But I was talking to a lot of people because usually I'll go, there are some bars there for the locals. It's everybody's on vacation. But usually I'll just go drink where the locals drink, no matter where I go, to get to know what it's really like to live there, because I'm always looking for stories. And the way it was described to me, it's like, if anybody, the business of Santorini is tourism. It's tourism. Yeah. If they find out that somebody who's working there steals from a tourist, that could give them a review like they could be stolen from. They will you're basically kicked off the island. It's like Survivor. You're gone, So a lot of the tourist areas, they're really careful about that because they don't want to get the bad reputation. The only thing I'd say that you have to be worried about, and I always tell people, like, if you want a new camera and everything, just take a trip to Rome. Like, we joke about that, right? Because it's, just buy the insurance, the theft insurance. But that really comes down to what you're doing with your bag. When you put your bag down and you're outdoors in a cafe in the piazza, you make sure your bag's between your legs, right? You can take the leg of it and put it through one of the straps. You can do these kind of things. You don't just leave your camera over here in the corner and turn around. Same thing with passports. You just make sure you're not carrying it in your hand all the time or in the front pocket, pickpocketing. I think there's not really too much danger out there. It's really, most of the thieves in Europe or different parts of Eastern Europe, it's opportunistic, right? Sure. It's not like they're violent or anything.
Low-hanging fruit. It's a low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, and if you're in Brazil, I've been in Rio quite a few times. They're like, no joke, take all your valuables off you and carry a dummy wallet. Because carry a dummy wallet and put a few cards in it and put $15 in it. So this is how it was explained to me. So when somebody robs you, not if somebody robs you, you'll have something to give them. And the thing is you have to have in the dummy wallet. It has to be believable, right? Or else they'll probably get this a lot. So you have to have like a convincing amount.
Real cards, a good fake ID, all that, right?
Well, yeah, and I was doing a lot of this before Google Maps, and so it was a little bit more difficult. I feel like now it's cheating, like as long as I have battery on my mobile device, I'll walk anywhere because I know I can Uber out of there if it gets bad.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. There's so many stories. I'm sure that you probably have multiple lifetimes of stories of different places you've been to and different adventures. When
Weird things, people trying to extort me for money. Yep, all sorts of fun stuff.
See, we got to talk again. Obviously, if one of the big issues I hit when I'm traveling, whether it's to Chicago to visit family or internationally or something, it's always the gear, the photo gear that you bring with you, and because my brain always goes to, I don't want to be wanting for something that I should have packed. But then I don't want to overpack and get there and on the way back, look at this big lens that I brought and lugged around and never used it. How do you what's your refinement process for making sure that you have the right stuff with you when you travel?
Well, now that I'm not homeless, taking everything with me, I can pack for the job. But yeah, I mean, that's the fear, right? You're like, do I need the 70 to 200? Am I really going to use it? And then you get there and you're like, I brought the 70 to 200. But you also don't want to, if you're taking, usually it's around 15, 20 kilos of gear if you're really packed for everything. That's all cameras, lenses, rails, and everything. But you don't want to carry all that while you're in the field. So if you have a good base location in a hotel room, what I do is I carry everything. For the last couple of years, I've had some major back issues over the last couple of years. Like I have the new Mind Shift. I think it's the 45L Elite. It's like a hiking pack, has a frame, a hydration pack, but it's huge, right? I'm walking through New York and I look like a fancy backpacker. Like it's just not right. So what I do is I pack a smaller bag in my check bag, like a day pack camera bag. And when I actually get there, I'll say, all right, well, I'm going, if it's Rome, it's easy. It's like, I'm going to shoot this bridge. I'm going to go across town. Then I'm going to have dinner with friends. I'm going to need this, this, and this. So I just pack that other bag. Everything else stays in the hotel. And I only start bringing what I need. In Bhutan, Tiger's Nest is a really famous monastery, but you got to hike, it's already at altitude. You have to hike for about, up to 3 hours if you do it slow. And if you have 20 kilos of gear, don't bring all that up there. You're probably not going to need that 70 to 200. You don't need both tripods. You don't need to take everything out that you don't need and then just pack for the day. And that's really that's the best thing that I ever did, was the extra bag.
So so if I'm hearing you right, so you'll have a larger loadout and then you'll pick from that depending on what the mission of the day is, right?
Yeah, and I actually have one here. This is what I've been doing. I have to show you this because it's life changing. So I'm also shooting with the GFX 100, which is a massive camera. So this shoulder bag, this think tank bag holds everything. It's the Spectral series. This flattens down, doesn't weigh anything, and it'll actually hold the GFX 100 and 2 extra lenses. Or if since I shoot a lot of sunsets, it also there's plenty of room for 2 beers in there too. So
priorities.
Yeah. So that's sort of what I do, and either take this as the carry-on with a laptop and everything in it, or I'll just throw it in the check bag and then just be able to pack for every occasion.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because then you can bring it. You have to deal with it on the flight. You have to deal with it getting to the hotel. In transit, it sucks because it's heavy and cumbersome, but it doesn't encumber you when you're out in the field. So that's a good thing to do. It saves your back. Trust me.
Are you doing any drone work out in the field? Yeah, that's a leading question because
I did. I
know
used
the answer to that. You don't
I used
anymore?
I haven't for a while. I used to do it a lot. I worked with DJI when they were developing the Phantom 3, and I've been flying since the Phantom 1. And then I worked with the first Inspire 1, and I was taking on a lot of projects. But that was pre-regulations and all of that when it was more like the Wild West. It was a little bit easier. Now all the places that I want to fly, it's like so many permissions. And I stopped doing it for a really interesting reason. Like Rome, for example, they banned it. I flew over the Vatican, and I have really amazing footage from it. But that was done before there was any ban in place. Now we see all those viral photos, and it's illegal to fly, and I don't want to encourage people to do it. So I just stopped doing things like that. It's kind of like those guys, the Russian daredevils in Dubai that hang off the edge of the roof. That causes security cameras to go up. They lock doors, and now nobody can go. It's one of those things where I just don't want to be the person that helps ruin it for everybody. So with the drone stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they'll see, oh, this guy did that. Let's not invite him back again. Right.
I'll use it if I need to. There's some areas where you need to shoot with a drone. And so I'll keep like a Mavic 2 with me just in case. But it sort of supplements my work.
Yeah. I get it. That's cool. So much stuff. What about clothing, Elia? So we'll transition to post-processing in a second, but I want to talk about like if you're going on a photo adventure, let's paint a picture. You're going on a photo adventure and, you pick the country and you're going to be there for 7 days, and the requester or the client says, we want these 5 kinds of photos. What does it look like, from the time you get the call and you agree and paperwork signed and you're ready to start booking? What does it look like from that point to when you sit down at the computer to post process? Are you getting on Google Maps and looking at, best places to shoot, and then using photographers ephemeris to find the best times to shoot there? And, how much detail do you put into it? Or do you just do, or use like the Marines and you just drop yourself behind enemy lines and rely on your own skills and talent and gear to get the shot? How does it work for you?
Well, that's hard to answer in one go, because obviously the clothes depend on the climate, and not just the climate, it's the level of activity, right? So if I'm going to be shooting a city, I'm not going to need crampons or ice shoes or these things. Although I have these little packable crampons that I take everywhere just in case there's ice. Because I've been up in weird places. Like they have to do events in Gothenburg, Sweden in middle of February. I'm like, Gothenburg, Sweden's like ice pack trying to take the ferry across. And I'm like, I don't have my crampons because I'm trying to look stylish because everybody there looks stylish, Yeah. But usually it would be, and find a good brand of clothing that works. I use Arc'teryx. Patagonia is great. North Face, Mountain Hardwear. They make the stuff that I use from Arc'teryx. It's expensive, but it never breaks. So I have some things that are outdoor clothing that look like they're not. So the hiking boots look like street shoes. And a lot of what I was doing over the last few years required me to be in the field shooting and then also on stage presenting. So I might be shooting somewhere remote, and then the next day I'm speaking in front of 300 people in an auditorium,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
I had to find versatility. But I think that it's all climate driven. If you're going to Iceland, bring layers, you know, that's it, you know, for cold stuff. And we had to pack when we were homeless, we had to pack for 0 degrees, I'll use Celsius, and 35 degrees Celsius, you know, freezing and Florida hot. So
Sure.
that was tough. But it has to do with layers. So you have one pair of thermal layers, the thin under layers. You have the down jackets, which weigh nothing now. And then you have an outer shell, or you have another jacket. So layer up and make sure that you have enough of everything. And this is, again, also going outside of your comfort zone, is how many sets of everything do you need? And the clothes are actually really important. As for an example, man, everything feels weird now that we've been 6 months into this. Last summer, I was working for the state of Kentucky, and I had to shoot. We did 2 things. We gathered a bunch of images for the entire state, and we also filmed a little TV show called Kentucky in Focus that I hosted. So we did a 6-part TV show for them too. But the problem was, a lot of the places they wanted to photograph, they wanted photos of, we couldn't find reference photos. And if you type Rome in, man, on Flickr or 500, you're going to find every vantage point. You know, it's easy to say here, 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 and here. But in Kentucky, like, well, this is 8 miles off the track, and this is kind of a cell phone picture of the side of it. I'm like, okay. And they're like, we need this many hero shots, and then we need a few hundred. They just call them outtakes. I call it B-roll. And my wife is really good. She's better at researching than me. I mean, we were looking at this, researching, trying to find photos, because we had to submit like a pin board or an idea board to them. They wanted to see everything we were going to shoot, and we couldn't find any reference images. And then we had to sign it, you know, saying that on contract, like, we're going to, you know, we promised to get these shots. So what was interesting is, like, okay, you know, I know that I'm going to be like the Roebling Bridge. I know that's going to be a good shot. I know that when we're in Red River Gorge, 2 of these arches are definitely going to be portfolio shots. You know, I know that these waterfalls are going to be, you know, A-roll hero shots. So we kind of figure all that out. And then, so we have knowns. So if it's a known and it's a big shot, then you have to plan not only location, but time. So if I'm going to stay in Cumberland Falls, I need to get the moonbow, I need to get the rainbow, and I need to get like some long exposure stuff from 3 different vantage points. So I have to say, if I'm going to do this at sunset, I'm going to need another one to do this. But if it's raining, I need an extra day. From there, you sort of, if it's for a client especially, while I'm there, we're going to scout things out. This might look good. This might look good. And then I'm going to spend my time trying to find things. We call it, it's like a controlled variable, basically, a known unknown. You know you're going to find something, but you don't know what it is. And sometimes it's really nice. So that way for the client, it's like, all right, here's a list. I know we're going to be able to get these 30 shots. And then anything else you find is supplemental that they end up really liking. For that project, that's when I switched to that hiking bag. And I'm not over it yet, but I mean, I have 2 very severe back injuries that should prevent me from doing any of this stuff. So I had to figure out a way to carry, you know, because they want panos, they need drone shots, they need telephoto, they need I had to bring everything with me. So it was really, really tough. And I also was not in hiking shape. So one of the first days, I had to do like a 9-mile round trip hike in the country. And I was dying. Like the first few days, like I had a guide, and he's like, "Are you okay? You're going to die." I was like, I might die, but I'm not sure yet. And then after like the first week, because I was doing it for 3 weeks, I was like, "Where you want to go? Let's hike 20 miles a day." You know,
nice.
I was totally into it, but that required a lot of planning. Most things, you know, if you're going to go, you don't really need much. I mean, it all really comes down to being comfortable carrying it. And camera bags are tough, especially these days, because not all of us have camera stores anyway, but it's not like any of us are going to try camera bags on right now. So you have to order everything online, but you have to be secure with it. And you just have to know that your gear is going to be okay. But yeah, I just say invest in the clothing early. If there's something you like, even if it's expensive, just check the warranty, because you only have to pay for it once. I mean, it kind of sucks up front, but it's like buying a good tripod. Every photographer who starts getting into photography, at first they're like, I don't need a fancy tripod. And then suddenly they're like, I really need a good tripod, you know, but you buy that tripod that you know you're going to use for the rest of your career. It's the same thing with clothing. And once you have it, it's great, because the certain, you know, 60, 70% of your gear that you take somewhere translates to almost every climate. And then it's just those little extras that you do. So I just unpacked my bag for the first time since we've had this house. I actually have most of the things are always sitting in the bedroom packed, and I never take them out. So I had, 2 razors, always 2 things of deodorant, 2 toothbrushes. I have 2 of everything because one always stays in the bag and one always, is here. But now I just put it all away because it's like my wife's so funny. She's like, you finally put the suitcase away. Yeah.
It's mark this on the calendar. What does it look like in terms of, the, like a day to day, like speaking just the one last question on the clothing part of it, like when you're traveling, do you pack for like 1 or 2 days and then rinse and repeat and wash the clothes while you're there? Like say you're on a extended adventure, or is it, I'm going for 7 days. I need 7 pairs of underwear, 7 pairs of socks. I might go out that night, so I need a dress shirt. How do you work that? Or is it the season travelers, some of the other season travelers I talked to, like, I got 2 pairs of clothes, 1 on me and 1 in the bag, and then at night I wash them and then dry them the next day and then keep doing it. How does Elia do it?
Well, who said anything about underwear to begin with? We have to. I think when I was
right there.
Yeah, it does. Saves a lot of space. Before I started doing this professionally, I'd go to hotels and, it has that little thing in the string that you can go wire across like a bathroom. I was like, why the hell would you ever need to put a clothesline in your bathroom? And I will, if I get desperate, I'm washing stuff in the sink and hanging it in the bathroom to dry. We're trying to hang it out the window so it dries. That's desperation move, right? Like, because you couldn't find laundry. That's the nice thing about having an Airbnb. Usually there's a washing machine, so you can take care of it. But we had to sort of structure that when we were location dependent for 5 years. That was just the most amazing feeling when all your clothes are clean. Like it was like, yes, because you don't have to worry about it for 2 weeks. But these days you should be able to bring enough. So photo trips are usually going to be upwards of 2 to 3 weeks max. And if they're not, like if you're going somewhere to Antarctica, you're going to be on a ship for a month, there's going to be services and stuff there too. So what I recommend and what I do now, and I love this about Japan, is almost every hotel, whether it's a business hotel, 3-star, whatever, they usually have laundry on some of the floors. So if you know that you're going to be able to do laundry every 3 or 4 days, don't bring everything. You don't need enough for a week. And usually I pack enough so that I know I pack for about 5 days, no matter what. But the pants that I use are, kind of hiking material. They just look nicer, and they wick moisture. And I usually bring 1 pair of jeans just in case I'm going out, something nice. And now if it's a pair of street shoes for being on stage, so I don't look like a hiker at Photokina. But that's it. Five max for pants. 3 pairs of pants, probably 4 or 5 t-shirts, and then the athletic or outerwear that I take, and that's it. And socks usually end up being the thing that you go through the most, but there've been plenty of times where I've just gone to the store and bought new socks and thrown the other ones away because I don't even want them touching the other stuff in the bag. I mean, that's when you have like 2 plastic bags inside the plastic bag of clothes with different bags of different, levels of funk. So you're like, I can maybe get on them, but then you don't want to get somewhere and it's like, now it all smells like feet. It's weird. You get used to it quick. And, my wife and
the title of this episode, is going to be managing multiple levels of funk.
Yeah. I mean, my wife, I'm so impressed with her because I probably have to take more shoes than she does. She's amazing at this stuff. And she's the one who can figure out like, okay, this is how you fold it. This is how you pack it. This is how you get more. This is how you get the weight down. I mean, I fold stuff, but I'm just like, okay, push in a bag and close it.
That's awesome. All right. So here, as we put the landing gear down on this, what does 2 of the things, the topics I want to cover real quick are, one is just how does the business look like how is your business structured? Where's the revenue coming from? Is it, all from these travel assignments from various brands? Is it coming from speaking? Is it course sales? Is it workshops? Like what does that constellation look like? And then we'll transition into post-processing.
Sure. Well, let's go historically what it was like for the past few years. There's going to be, I could do upwards of 100 workshops a year. whether those are 1 day things or 2 day things while I'm traveling. Yeah, 100. I can do 100 workshops a
Wow.
year.
Wait, you
It's
said
wild.
100, not one or
Yeah,
two, 100.
I can do upwards of 100 if it's a good year, and that could be 20 or 30 with Fujifilm. Maybe it's Middle East and Southeast Asia or East Asia. I could do that circuit. Do 7 talks in 4 days sometimes. Just multiple places, and then I'll go shoot while I'm there if I have time, and I might be shooting some promotional images for some companies or doing some behind the scenes stuff. Or usually when I take on with travel, it's easy because if a company says, Fujifilm says this camera's coming out, this lens is coming out, can you get promotional images? I'm like, well, I'm going to be in Patagonia, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. Yeah, I should be able to do that. So I usually stack different things on top. So if I was in Patagonia leading a photo tour, I'm also shooting while I'm there for different things and collecting other assets that I might need. So always money coming from workshops, photo tours, assignments. Assignments can include sponsor related kind of stuff. And then not just that is I built the Photographing the World tutorials back in 2014 with f-stoppers, and we had 4 complete series. So there's residual too. Those continue to sell, which I'm really thankful for. And we were going to be creating another one this year. And then there's the other stuff that comes in. And I think, I didn't even mention, what's funny is a photographer, and I didn't even mention image sales, right?
Right.
So I don't even count, even though it's a portion of my income comes from the licensing and sale of my images, I don't actually count that as a measurable income because I don't work with any stock agencies. I do everything myself. So whatever comes in there, I count as extra because I can't rely on it because that's not my real business model. In fact, now over the last few years, I started working with a company called PhotoClaim, and they will find out if anybody is using my images illegally and then request settlement or take them to court over it. And I have a few thousand cases. So I now have a residual income from image theft. And last year, I made more money from people stealing my images than people buying them.
Wow.
It's a really
That's a business
weird
model.
thing to say. And come to find out, there's there are people that do that, try to get things stolen, but it's
kind of like that fake wallet in Rome, right?
The fake wallet in Rio, yeah. There are so many things. And then this year, a lot of residual stuff. There were some things that we were finishing and sort of pay out. Last year was a pretty busy year. I think 16, 17, 18, 19 for me were just, I didn't have a minute to myself or, for anything. And this year I have a couple products coming out with Skyloom, which is great. So epic sunsets, and I have a looks pack. I just released the first episode of the season 2 of Moments in Time, which Skyloom is sponsoring this time too, which is great. I don't know if we're going to be able to film more, but that's just so many moving parts and years of conceptual to the actual filming to everything. I'm also working with Adobe. If you go to Adobe Lightroom, not Classic, the new version of Lightroom, and you go to the Explore tab and you see all those tutorials and everything that comes up, you're going to start seeing tutorials from me. I'm getting ready to, actually I'm shooting something with f-stoppers in a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to be producing my own content for my own website starting in the next couple of months. So I've shifted in because, the travel and workshop things, it's not there. For all of us, it's changed. So I've shifted into a model where I'm really focusing on content and education. And it's going really well because I think that a few years ago I was looking at all the online content. I'm like, we have enough of this. We have enough of that. What we learned about being in quarantine, there's not enough. How many times can you watch Tiger King? You need one every week, we need stuff. So there's a huge demand for more content, and I've just been kind of taking advantage of it. And really this year, relying on residual income so that I can actually just be at home with my daughter too.
Yeah. And I think this time that all smart moves, right? Because this time you're shoring up the internal kind of structures of the business. Then when everything opens up, you're good inside and good outside, right? So yeah,
trying to shift it. Like and I think that this is a good lesson for people too. It's like, for me, I already have these connections and clients that are just, people are like, if you could produce this content, I'm like, I can't go to the studio, I'm not home. Now I'm like, well, if I were to build this as the new model, as the foundation, if the travel comes in, then that could supplement. And honestly, after 11 years of traveling full time, I can slow down for a couple of years and be happy.
Yeah,
I don't have anything left to prove, and I actually would kind of welcome this break to be at home. But I've recognized that we don't have a deadline to all of this, and what a lot of my friends have done, non-photographers and photographers alike, is they've taken the time to learn something else. If you wanted to get better at a certain avenue of it, now's the time, because we have time. I think this is a good transition point for people to learn a new skill or to focus on another aspect of the business. And I think a lot of us will come out. I hope to say that a lot of us will come out better for this, because we've actually had the time to address our business, our health, our mental health, everything that we always put off. That I certainly
and take a breath, right?
Take a breath, yeah. Enjoy your family.
The world has forced everybody to press pause and kind of reassess. And
it's kind of like, y'all need to wait a minute. Yeah.
It's like, just take a beat. As we wrap this up, Elia, just how does the post-processing work for you? Are you shooting and then giving it over to an assistant staff or team that are doing sort of the readiness for going out to the client, or do you handle all the pixel peeping and fixing of stuff yourself?
I do it all myself. Actually, my wife and I, we do all of this, which is why we usually don't have a free minute. So when people are like, sorry, apologies for the delay on the email, I have that as like a 1-button macro now, because it's all the time. For post-processing,
just make it an autoresponder. Just have it go out like a week after the first email gets there. You're good.
Yeah, timing is timing. But I think the post-processing stuff, been in a few situations now where there are thousands of raw files. And the Kentucky project was great because I might shoot the same waterfall 50 different ways. And then I want to create like a collection for the client. And that's usually what I'm doing, trying to give them the best ones. But I'm like, man, I just can't look at this waterfall anymore. My wife's amazing at selection. If I say these 3, which one? She's like, that one. I'm like, oh, you're right. That helps. Yeah. So honing the process, and then maybe doing some light editing in Lightroom, because if you're going to send a batch of images as possible hero shots that you're going to continue editing, you don't usually send straight out of camera. You're at least going to pull the shadows and highlights a little bit and make them look a little bit more full. Yeah. The sky shouldn't be blown out, or they're going to be like, the sky, you can tell them the sky won't be blown out. So look at this, they're like, the sky's blown out. It just happens when you work with people like that. But for the most part, it's just been me. Kind of hoping my nephew gets better. I gave him a bunch of Photoshop courses to download, so I'm having him learn Photoshop. The secret thing is, try to get my family now to learn. Good. So I could have some help, but no, it's all me. We stare in front of, that's the other side of being a travel photographer, is as much as we like to think that we're out somewhere beautiful and nice, usually we're just, in a room at home in the dark with a monitor. So
yeah, you're the hunter and the cook, right? So you got to bring in the bacon and cook it.
Brain, it's wild. It's hard to shift into gears. If you work all day, then you have to go out and shoot. It's hard to, you really got to get into it one way, and then just to shift, it takes a lot of practice.
And how do you fit Luminar in there? I know you're working with Skylum a lot. Where does Luminar fit into your post-processing workflow? Well, after shooting,
and it just depends on the camera and the dynamic range. Usually it's a single raw. Sometimes there's some blending that happens, but everything starts with raw processing. I use Lightroom almost for everything now. So I'm usually shifting everything, highlights, shadows, splitting white balance, doing some spot healing, not healing, but highlight correction and things like that, just to really push the light and some of the contrast and set the saturation point. Then I move into Photoshop, and usually that's when I have to do something. It's usually object removal, little things that need touch up. Then I actually use Skylum first, because Luminar is incredible. And I'm kind of a skeptic for a long time, because if you do this for a long time, everybody says, can you try this software? Can you try this bag? Can you do that? And they want you to say good things. And I'm very honest. I only work with the people that things that I utilize. And it usually goes, hey, yeah, I'll try it. But if I don't use it, I'm not going to promote it because it's just not right. It has to fit into my workflow. So Skylum over the years has just killed it. It's wild. So in Luminar, I can use a couple of the plugins and sliders to get like super rich contrast, vibrant color, and everything that saves me a lot of time. So I'll usually have a pass that comes through that on top of the raw adjustment. And then usually all I have to do is fine tune. Then I'm doing my selective adjustments, any masking, luminosity masking I have to do to sort of like pull highlights and colors in little areas, kind of on top of that. So it's kind of like those two heavy hitter things, raw adjustment, take as much as possible in Luminar to get it to have that punch. And then you can sort of fine tune. And then it's like refinement. And then the hardest part is knowing when to stop. And the other thing too, when you're doing this, never send something the same day you edit it. Just don't. At least wait a day. Because when you open it, you're going to be like, ooh, that red was too hot. You're going to notice something. And that's a rule. Send it the next day and always look at it twice. And if you have to do things on a deadline, work on multiple images at once. But don't just do that. If you're working on all these images where you have really warm tones, sunrise, sunset, throw a blue hour or night shot in there and just keep rotating between. Because you're going to stare at the blue tones for a while and you're not going to notice things. Once you get back to the red tones, the complementary color side, everything will pop out at you again. Because you just reset your eyes and it's just like honing. So sometimes I'll leave it there for a week, open it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, close it. And then one day I'll open it and be like, oh, done.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing works for email as well, right? Never send an important email right after you write it. Let it marinate for a day and then go back and look at it and then send it, right?
And especially like when you're drinking, I have friends who like are, they just end up with Amazon. Like I get Amazon packages from my friends, like they're joke Amazoning me. And they're like, did you send me this? They're like, I don't remember. And I'm like, how did you? Yeah, there are a lot of things that you should probably wait that next morning. Emails these days. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, that could be expensive to accidentally send an email when you didn't mean to, or even have typos in there, or just, it has the wrong tone because you've been drinking Jack Daniels or something. So,
Jack Daniels will usually give you the wrong tone. Yeah, that's not a...
Yeah, might work for editing photos, but not so much for emails, right?
What did Hemingway said? Write drunk, edit sober. So he was onto something there, probably.
There you go. That works for photography too. Cool, man. If people want to connect with you, see the stuff that you're working on, engage with you, get a course, whatever. What's the best way to connect with you online?
My social media is just my name, Elia Locardi. I'm probably most active on Facebook and Instagram. And the latest thing that I'm working on is season 2 of Moments in Time on YouTube. So the freshest content that I'm creating is on YouTube right now. And I'm usually on Instagram and posting the most to there. But my website obviously takes you anywhere you want to go. There's also links to the tutorials that I have available, Photographing the World with F-Stoppers, 4 complete series. And when I say complete series, it's usually around 15 lessons, 12 to 15 hours of content per series. It also comes with a behind-the-scenes series, which is pretty ridiculous and fun in its own right. But right now, if you are curious, if you want to do one thing, go to YouTube and watch the latest episode of Moments in Time in the Philippines. This was a passion project over the last few years. And there's just basically 3 of us in the field are shooting that. And then my wife is a producer and we have an editor. And we've gotten it to the point where it really feels like it's meant for television as far as the production value. So we've been working on that almost exclusively over the last 2 years to try to hone this process. As I grew up with so many things on Discovery Channel that I loved, and so it was sort of my goal was to, what if can we make one of these shows? Can we do this? Do we have the resources? So that's what I'm most proud of right now.
Pulling out your inner David Attenborough kind of thing.
Oh, I love his voice. Yeah, his narration is amazing. It's amazing. Moments in Time is fun. It's free. You learn stuff. You meet amazing photographers all over the world.
Love it. Cool, man. All right, I want to leave you with this. What's the one of the most embarrassing moments that you've experienced in your time traveling, these hundreds of thousands of miles around the planet multiple times? What's an embarrassing or noteworthy experience you want to share with the audience?
Um,
I see you editing. I can see your brain self-editing right now. Like,
do you remember? Was it? Oh God, which movie was it with Chris Farley and David Spade, where David Spade's in the hotel room and he's like housekeeping, and he's not. Remember? Do you remember that when he's like
oh
housekeeping?
yeah, I remember. I don't remember.
Do you remember that
Tell
bit?
me that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that
it's sort of pop culture for people our age, right? And I just remember like
Yeah.
we were staying in Hong Kong with Lee and Patrick, and Naomi was, she's in the room. I didn't have my key, and I start knocking on the door, and I'm like, housekeeping, like gonna do the whole the joke thing, which ends pretty raunchy.
Yeah.
And I just remember I'm getting into the part that I probably shouldn't be saying, and
No,
then
you can. Yeah.
this old Chinese woman opens the door, and she's like, "Excuse me," and I'm like, "What floor is this?" Oh shit, I'm on the wrong floor. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh God, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Another thing that was fun, thankfully nobody noticed this. I was staying in I don't know. I think I was actually staying here in Melbourne, and I just rent a car, right? And I go out of the hotel and I get in the car and I'm like the key, what the heck's wrong with the key? And I'm like stomping on the thing, like shaking the steering wheel and all this stuff. And then I'm looking and I'm like, when did that hang in the window? And I look around, I'm like, that's not any of my stuff. I'm like, I'm in the wrong car. And it turned out somebody had the exact same rental car and it wasn't locked. So when I pressed the thing, like I just assumed it unlocked.
It was already unlocked. Yeah.
Car, like in the car. And I'm like, get out, close the door, run up to my car and get in.
The adventures of travel.
So
Oh man.
adult rated ones that I could get into sometime too.
We'll talk about those over
rated.
beers when the world opens up and we sit down for a beer. We'll talk about those.
Exactly.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for taking the time today. I appreciate you doing this. Yeah, definitely moments. And the next thing I'm going to check out after this is Moments in Time in the Philippines. I got to check that out. I'm excited to see what's going on there. Yeah. So you're an inspiration, man. Like I said at the beginning, no joke. World travel photographer is kind of that's the thing that most or a lot of landscape and just sort of street photographers and people running around the planet today that just love this stuff. That's the holy grail, right? To do that and do what you do and shoot and be sponsored and teach and educate and make amazing pictures all the time. So congratulations on all that, man. It's fantastic.
And I can just say that it takes passion. So photography makes the best hobby and it makes a horrible profession. It's kind of like that whole thing where you say, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. That's bullshit because you're going to get so sick of doing it every day. So I think that even if photography is your profession, it has to be your passion too. So a lot of the people that you'll talk to when they're doing something, you say, this is what I want to do. Maybe it wasn't their intention. They were really positive, just love it. So you have to go into it with passion and you just have to do it. That's the most important thing with photography is don't worry about all the professional side of the stuff. You just have to shoot. You have to be out there all the time doing it. And usually those other things will start to find you, and and in our industry too, I'm not going to name names. I never do, but we meet a lot of egos and there are quite a few people where you don't want to have that follow-up conversation with because people tend to be a little full of themselves and it's bad. Yes. So check the ego at the door. The people that you meet anywhere in the world could be the people that you're working for later. Just treat people with respect, be curious and be kind. And I think then things will start to gravitate towards you.
Love it. Perfect. We'll leave it right there. Those are perfect words to end on. Elia Locardi, thank you, sir. And you be safe out there. We'll talk again soon. This episode was made possible by our friends at Fujifilm. Make images, share stories, and experience moments at the speed of life with Fujifilm. Thank you for staying home with us.